me know if you're having any sound difficulties, and you can use the chat box for any questions. I'll just take a quick moment to make sure sound is okay. I can turn the volume up. If you are on the call, please do mute yourself. I'll attempt to manage all attendees that way as well, but if you can just make sure to sort of mute yourself if you're on the call. We've got folks in the room in Chicago and a number of folks online, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited today to welcome Emily Drake from the Career Transition Center. She'll be talking about managing a portfolio career. Emily brings us a number of years of experience working in nonprofits, in higher education, back in nonprofit, and has experienced a couple of career changes. So we're really grateful to hear sort of what that journey was like, and hopefully some of you may either be in that journey or considering what that journey will look like for you. With that, I want to just mention this session will be recorded, so if you have a question, just know that your sound will be recorded. Hopefully you can also see, for those of you on the call, you can see a screen. We are sharing some slides throughout the session. If you have questions, go ahead and use the chat box, and I'll do my best to I'll make a motion so you know. Right. The slide change, yeah. Yeah, okay. You need to move, and also if there's questions online. And with that, I want to go ahead and welcome you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I am delighted to be here. I sort of consider conversing with all of you today as kind of a peer discussion. It's an honor to be in front of folks who are willing to do this work and be of service. And even if you haven't figured out what format that is going to look like, that it's really important. I was asked initially, I think Aisha and Laura both kind of came to me and said, you know, can you speak to what you've put together? And sometimes I say, like, what I've cobbled together as a career. And there's a name for that today, which is great, because I don't have to say I've cobbled it together, kind of what I'm doing for my professional life. It's called a portfolio career. And in the world of career development, which is where I move around in, sort of identify myself as a career counselor. I also identify myself as an entrepreneur. I identify myself as a director, a wife, a daughter. I mean, I have a lot of different identities, which is kind of the beauty of it. And they all fall under one very defined brand. So I'm actually going to talk quite a bit about brand and what that means for me and what it means for you. It's a non-negotiable kind of conversation. You have to determine what your brand is. And you have to be really clear about that, because ultimately it helps you make decisions that are aligned with your values, aligned with your goals, instead of scattershot, figuring it out, stressing yourself out, which I think I can say that because I still live in a stressful life, don't get me wrong. But it's an intentional stress, and I just wasn't really intentional about my stress before. So thank you, Laura and Aisha, for having me. The way I kind of want to talk about this is I'm definitely going to share with you my day-to-day, kind of what my career looks like, how it looks like a portfolio career. We're going to define portfolio career. I found a couple really great definitions for what it is. It's not just like getting a few things and making it work. There is, again, that word intentionality behind it is really important. And then I'm going to share a little bit about how you can kind of screen for whether or not the portfolio experience is a good fit for you. And anytime I offer sort of like, follow these 10 steps and you'll know if it's a fit, I'm mindful of, I mean, you know within you, as I sort of describe my day-to-day, this is something that's like, I think I might like to try that, or if it's terrifying. Part of my story is I always thought my career would be very linear. So I always thought I just would keep kind of going like this, add like senior to the front and like vice to the front, and like, add some words to my title. And once I realized that wasn't happening, it was terrifying. It was a really scary experience for me that I had to go through to get to this place. So that's kind of a punchline that I'll keep coming back to, is the discomfort of this is totally normal. Next slide. Por favor. All right, so defining a portfolio career. This is from Penelope Trunk. She is the founder. She's founded a couple things, but she founded a company called Quizstick. Quizstick, I just wrote this down because I wanted to remember, creates online courses designed to help you build a career that supports the life you want. So she actually has a clearinghouse of courses on networking, interpreting your MBTI profile, what that means in the world of work. People like me or Laura or Shakira, once we feel like we're qualified and have a curriculum, can go on Quizstick and teach these classes, and we make money doing it, like 50%. I think they charge about $1,500 a course. We make 60% of that. So she's an entrepreneur. She started 4 companies. Brazen Careerist is another one that maybe some of you have heard of. If you don't follow them or you don't get their newsletter, I suggest it. It's a great website, Brazen Careerist. She defines portfolio career as this. A portfolio career is not the same thing as holding down 3 bad jobs and wishing you could figure out what to do with yourself. Rather, it is a scheme you pursue purposefully and positively as a way to achieve financial or personal goals, or a mixture of both. So this really fits for me, so I wanted to share this. The portfolio idea is really born out of necessity. So portfolios have long been known to be really good for artists, obviously. You're going to have a portfolio, you show your work. I think that's what we think about when we think of portfolio. Early 2000s were not great for the economy. Moving into the mid-2000s and late 2000s, also not good. So people started to do this cobbling together thing just out of necessity. You had to pay the mortgage, you had to pay the rent. So you figure out how to do a freelance job here and there, you figure out how to consult, you figure out how to work part-time at Starbucks, and make it happen. And it turns out as things improve, which is arguable, I think things are improving truly based on what I see every day. It turns out that the portfolio lifestyle is really fulfilling. So even though there are more full-time jobs now, and the outlook for counselors is bright, according to the Department of Labor, and their little sunshine that they put on the ONET website, people are still opting to do this portfolio experience because it affords you certain things. And I think that that's a really important thing, that this is a choice that I personally pursuing purposefully. But it was born out of maybe a not a choice, like kind of having to figure it out and put a tapestry together versus like a 9-to-5, which has its benefits too. All right, a little bit more on the definition front, and then we'll move on. So this comes from Marcy Algor. She wrote a book called One Person / Multiple Careers, a new model for work-life success. And she says a portfolio careerist income, because we're going to talk about money today too, if that's okay. Yeah, I figured that might be all right. Income comes from part-time employment, temporary work, freelance assignments, or a personal business, or they work a full-time job while pursuing other lucrative interests. Okay? Portfolio careerists, and I love this, and I'm going to come back to this throughout my conversation with you. Portfolio careerists take the anchor orbiter approach, meaning one job requires a physical presence at a certain location. So, in other words, an office job. And then you have other jobs, freelance work, consulting, that kind of orbit that job. But they're very much connected, right? I think the word orbit is really important. They're all speaking to each other. So that's another sort of way to think about this type of work, or this career path. Next slide. All right, that's the task. So I had to do this because I've not been in search mode recently, but I wanted to take a look at just sort of what the Department of Labor is saying for mental health counselors and marriage and family therapists. So what we've got here, 41.5 a year, 20 an hour, median pay, okay, which is not surprising necessarily. The outlook's really bright. So 30% growth in the next 10 years, awesome. And I'm actually delighted by that, considering the news that we've received of late in our fair state and some closings around town. That's good news for what it's worth. If I can, and I'd like to, if I can I pause and ask questions or no? Okay. What are you kind of feeling about as you launch, if you're graduating, or just sort of in general, what are you feeling about kind of the dynamics, the economy, sort of what the job ops are? Like, where are you at just emotionally with this whole experience right now? And is this like, yeah, I know, I hear it, I know it. How are we, where are we at? Yeah. Anxious.
Like, I feel a great deal of anxiety when I open the laptop to look for jobs to apply for.
Okay. The fear is what? Say more about that.
I'm not sure, I guess, interviewing because I haven't looked for a career. I've always just kind of had jobs, working jobs, stuff like that. So then, like, navigating salary and how much it's to work, so money.
Money.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you said that. Absolutely. Yeah. Am I going to be able to have the lifestyle I want on a counselor's salary, right? That's a question that I think a lot of us who maybe came from another career had to sort of like navigate. Part of my story, and I'll give you my bio in a couple slides here, is I took a huge pay cut to become a counselor. And now I'm working my way back to a place where I can really make some good money. And in my head, that means I travel once a year, or twice maybe. I have a lifestyle where I can go out on occasion. I mean, we're not having crazy, lavishness, but that's really important to me. My sanity is important to me, and it's important to my clients. So thank you for sharing that. What else are we? Yeah.
Well, I'm not graduating. I'm already established in my career and have a degree. And I mean, still, that's something that I get anxious about. But even more than that is about the work that I like to be able to do that is aligned with my core values. And my career is that, but there's more to it. So,
yeah. There's, Laura and I talked about this. There's David Brooks has the new book out. He's on the circuit right now. Everyone's talking about it, The Road to Character, talking about purpose and sort of, my offshoot of his whole message is that we have to do the work internally. We just have to. It's just not avoidable. So when I said at the front end, you need to define your brand, and if that's like, where do I start? Don't sweat it. We can talk about it. I mean, it's not super scary, and I'll walk you through kind of how I did it. You don't do it alone, by the way. So if you're thinking you can, just stay up all night and figure out your brand, it's not recommended. But yeah, the idea of alignment, that in order to be of best service and to step into a career or a portfolio career that is most fulfilling, you have to have it kind of align with your internal work. So whether that you figure that out through assessments, and I'm sure you offer a whole host of assessments here in terms of personality and MBTI. What do you offer? Through your courses. Okay, sure. So yeah, doing that work to then, it's sort of like inside work to then go outside and be of service. So thank you for bringing that up. So you're established, you have an income, but there's like a little little crook in there. Okay.
What kind of plan on to kind of trying to identify your strengths and then either re-emerging into a niche after you've already kind of had a career and now you're going in the next direction, or finding a way to sort of live between two worlds that you have an interest in.
Yeah. That's a juicy one. My reaction to that is sort of, I want to know everything about what you've done before, just to say, let's just piece this out, because I bet you don't, it's not as big of a departure as you think it's going to be to do what's next. There's sort of mind for goals in that front-end experience. Is that a question? Do I need to answer? Or is it just,
I don't know that it's so much a question, but saying that that's what they're looking for, trying a way to find a way to figure out how to put it all together, understanding what steady work history means, and sort of how can that be balanced with, portfolio career. So.
Okay. So I think we'll come back to some of those, because I have a feeling as we go through the next few slides, some will be answered. So please don't let me forget that people on the phone have questions. But I think the branding piece will really get to that. So let's go to the next slide. The point that I wanted to make with bringing up the salary is we all know this. This is what we know when we look at the job board. This is the obvious information. You're going to make roughly mid-40s. You're potentially going to work at an agency. You might work at a community organization. You might, I don't know, I don't actually know where you guys are kind of looking, but we can talk about that. I'm going to ask you to think a different way. I'm going to actually ask you to sort of consider and invite you, because this is very real, that the job that you are destined for is maybe not a job description, actually. I'm going to invite you to think about choosing the next step, not being led to the next step by a job posting or even by your internship. So there is power in this, in making a choice once you've done your work and kind of know what kind of aligns for you, and then going out and hunting and getting it. And I say this from a place I'm actually hearing myself talk right now. 5 years ago, I would have been like, you're crazy. This is crazy. go get a job. Right? I have a job. I have my anchor, so that is part of my story. But I don't think we give ourselves permission a lot of times to sort of think a different way about this because we're scared. We have bills to pay. So let me just share. This is my bio slide. I'm just going to go over this briefly because I think some of my background, all of my background, informs kind of what I would say kind of the courage and blind faith it took to do some of the portfolio career stuff. I started in public relations. So out of that comes a lot of my passion for the written word, which comes into play every day when I'm writing website content or collateral in my jobs. So I did that for 8 years. I then had a mental breakdown. I mean, it really can only sort of be described as completely tragic and traumatic. And I would have stayed in PR had I not had an intervention from my husband and my mom, who said, Emily, who are you? You're not eating. You're not sleeping. Your BlackBerry is by your nightstand. You're freaking out. You're not available, right? Otherwise, I actually think I'd still be in that business because Emily Drake doesn't quit things, don't you know? So they held up a mirror for me, which I don't know if anyone else can relate to this experience of sort of having a career that kind of broke you down, and that's kind of how you got to a place where you're like, okay, it's time to do what I really want to do. But that took a while to figure out as well. So I transitioned into youth development, and this is actually, I volunteered at this organization, Jobs for Youth, while I was super depressed. Yeah, and it helped me get out of that sort of bottom. And I decided to go back to school. So I got my master's while I was working at Jobs for Youth, and I did my clinical work at Children's Home and Aid, and then at Jobs for Youth. So I worked with children of the Words of the State, parents, birth parents, working on reunification efforts. And then I also worked with 18 to 24-year-olds who were just kind of doing the 18 to 24-year-old thing, which is to say a lot of discovery, a lot of sort of trauma work, a lot of crisis work with them. And then some career work, too. That was always part of this. Even when I was a PR supervisor, it was like people were coming to me and they'd be like, how do I get a promotion? And I'd be like, close the door, let's whiteboard this. I mean, it was always the part of me, regardless of what sort of format that was coming up. I transitioned into higher education from Jobs for Youth. So I worked at National Louis University. I took that job almost 100% because I'd be reporting to an LCTC, who happened to work as the Director of Career Development. I was an LPC fresh out of school. Not fresh, that's actually not true. About a year and a half out of school. Kind of fresh. Kind of fresh. I still go with fresh. And I took it so that I could continue to get my hours, right? But also work in a job that was not a community agency, that was sort of, had some stability, had tuition dollars coming in, and was really sort of in this education sweet spot that I was kind of carving out. So she supervised me there. She still supervises me today. So I still pay for supervision. I still talk to every month. I still get that kind of that touch with the clinical piece. And at National Louis, I counseled veterans and first-generation students, but it was career counseling, right? This was not like clinical work, whatever that means. I would argue it is clinical, and that's how I sort of approached it. But working with veterans was also a conscious choice. What are we reading about? Trends. Where are we now able to get jobs before LPCs? Hallelujah, right? So I knew that that was a target audience in a market that was growing. So that was a very conscious decision. And then I got over to Career Transition Center, which is where I roost now from 9 to 5. And the important punchline on that transition is I had a few jobs come across my desk while I was at National. Back in, let's see, March 2004, I had done my work to figure out my branding statement. And I had done it with a group of people over the course of 12 weeks. So this is a grueling process in a good way. So I had a few offers come across, and the branding statement enabled me to say no, no, yes. Otherwise, this is my story. Otherwise, before that, if the phone rang and it was more money and a better title, I took it. There's like no question, right? We're just going to keep moving like this. Yeah.
You said 2004, but I think you meant 2014. Okay. All right.
So once I landed at CTC, I was kind of already branching out. So let's move on to the next slide, which I think this will better kind of explain what I'm talking about. So this is Portfolio Career in Action. This is kind of what it looks like for me today. This slide is all about format. So I'm going to talk in terms of format and context. The context of all of these is the same. Where I do them and who's in the audience is different. So it's very likely that I will present on this topic at Career Transition Center next month. Very likely. I've done the work to put it together. Hopefully it's of service. Hopefully there's some insight gained. It is my responsibility, I sort of feel, to sort of do it again. So these are the three things that are occupied. These are the three formats in which I work. Career Transition Center's an office. I've got some uplighting. I've got some new music in the background because that's how I best work. But it's an office. I go there from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay. Playing 5 Academy is hosted out of 1871, right across the street. It's a startup that was launched in January of 2014. 25, which has a funny name. It's actually a Navy term. My business partner is a Navy veteran. Plank 5 was born out of this idea that people want to go further. They want to get fulfillment in their career, and you shouldn't have to go to grad school to do that. No offense, but we all did. But you shouldn't have to. You don't have to do this determined fulfillment work. So we offer a 12-week personal and professional incubator that takes people through the paces of Strength Finder, of DISC, of accountability, of setting goals, of achieving goals with a partner. And that's where I did my work for branding. But I found out about it because Todd, my business partner, wanted to hire me. He saw me at National. He knew me through the veteran space. Okay, so networking is the ultimate punchline of all of this, too, of course. And he said, you know what, go through the course, and then if you like it, come work for us. Be a facilitator. And I'm a facilitator with Plank 5. That, I do a lot of work from home. I do a lot of work kind of over at 1871. It's a very sort of mobile environment, so it's not in a box, an office. Straight Career Counseling was born out of a phone call from someone who said, hey, do you ever counsel people, like, privately for career? I mean, you do it at National. Did you ever do it? Like, my mom used to help me. I thought to myself, well, geez, this seems like an opportunity. How are we going to do this? And so my first client was a 50-year-old woman in Tennessee who was disabled but wanted to go back to work. And her daughter paid me some money to help her do that. So I worked with her over the phone, which was like also totally foreign, but another opportunity to learn. And then I started kind of just doing it. I wasn't really thinking, I didn't have a business plan. I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just kind of like, okay, I've got a supervisor, so I'm being responsible. I'm checking in with her about my clients. I'm doing this over the phone. Who needs an office? No big deal. Turns out now I have clients in Chicago, and I do have an office at 30 North Michigan on the 19th floor. I got that from a friend who has a suite with 3 offices and said he'd rent it to me for $15 an hour. Okay, so what do I need to charge to make some money doing that? Okay, figure that out. How do I know what to charge? You get out and you talk to people. So I'm really oversimplifying this, and the intent is not, because I'm sure there's questions about, like, well, how, what, when, legality, like all that. Happy to answer those too. I've done my due diligence, but I'm also saying I was already doing this in November 2013, and I didn't put this on my LinkedIn until April 2014. And that was because people said, you're doing it, right? I said, yes. Why isn't it on your LinkedIn then? Why don't you give it a name? Why don't you start telling people that you do it? And that was really scary without a business plan, because that's what you do, right? Like, you have a business plan first. So I'm not saying do it my way. I'm just saying there are probably things that you're doing right now that really drive you, that motivate you, that you may have fallen into or not, or things you're ignoring because it doesn't make sense. And I'm just saying name it, call it out, and put it out there, and see what happens. This is how portfolio careers for me work. So there's an hourly fee here. There is a big fee to attend our workshops here, and then I make a salary and get benefits. And I don't get benefits. There's a salary there. So this salary is more than the slide before. Not a ton more, but more. But I need to make more than that. And so I'm not money driven, but we all are in some ways. So kind of figuring this out. So the format is different. The context is the same. We're all of these forms I talk about career fulfillment. feeling compelled to pause for questions, but I don't have to. What do you think?
We have one question that kind of came through.
Okay.
And you can address them at any point, but I think
Oh,
it's good to think about them.
Okay.
Is that sort of harder to sell yourself as a result because people don't understand portfolio first and thinking about what that might mean in terms of implication? And then the other is, are you open to people connecting with you afterwards if they have more?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definite yes to the second one. The first one is it actually a disservice to have multiple?
How you convey this to employers who are less familiar.
Okay. Absolutely. I will get to that.
Okay, good.
Anything in the room at this point? I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so I know I'm like, we're getting there, but I just want to pause and see if there's specifically about the format. Yeah.
All right. So I was in private practice, or I am in private practice for my internship, and I like it. But the thing that's confusing to me about what to do for the next 2 years to get my LCPC hours is if I already know I like that, should I keep doing it? You know that I also dearly love programming. So since internships will only hire LPCs part-time, if at all, then that means instant portfolio career for me, which I've been doing the last 5 years anyway, so I'm good with that. But then I think most of us also have, our only real experience is the internship, and I feel there's this pressure to do something totally different next to like round myself out professionally,
Okay.
and I'm confused.
What is your question?
If you have any advice about
Yeah.
sticking with the one thing you've done that you know works versus trying something totally different.
Question. So I'm going to argue that, and you said something interesting about real experience, like this is the first real experience you've ever had.
You nail me on that.
It's not. Okay, it is going to be some work. So I don't think anyone should make like a full departure just to try something out necessarily without doing the alignment work, without doing the brand work. Then at least you can pivot with some confidence that this allows me to, and I'll share my brand in a moment, this allows me to be like a storyteller and a connector. So I know that if I go this way, I'll at least be somewhat satisfied. Okay. So I don't think that, I mean, risk-taking is great, but there's also, there's a time and a place. And I think whatever you can do to sort of mitigate risk is good. So I think that, I don't know.
I think that I need to do the branding exercise. Yeah. I think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And you have, now you have great people. Don't do this with your peers, too. I know you've got great friends here and support, so they can help you with it. And I have resources, too, happy to share. Okay, next slide. All right, I'm going to go real quick on this one. So this is just a day in the life. To tell you, like, quite literally what I do. So this is the context of what I do. So with format, we got the 3, we know where I'm sitting, when I'm doing it. I do have clinical work. I work with, right now I have about 3 or 4 clients that I'm seeing either through CTC or through my private practice. Most of them are weekly. I'm counseling someone in Toronto right now who's a casting director for reality television. Fine. He doesn't want to do that anymore. So we're doing the branding work with him, and he hates it. He really hates it. He is someone who is a freelancer for life and has never had to think like this. It's just like, what's next? Get the next project. But we're finding different sort of ways to get to the end point. That's the work of a counselor, right? Like we're going to sort of get you there, meet you where you're at, and get you where you need to go, how on your own terms, with some shepherding. And then I have phone supervision, as I mentioned. So I meet with my supervisor every month. We do that religiously. The business piece. So for those of you who have any interest in kind of like branding, running a business, what is that about? Financing, business development. You're going to rock in the portfolio career space because it's a lot about creation, developing content, developing sort of a financial model that works. I remember when I told my business partner, Todd, the veteran, what I was charging for my career counseling practice. He was like, oh, let's have a talk. This is not enough. I didn't know. I also, as a woman, lots of women tend to undervalue what we're worth. Okay, so go out and talk to these men who are doing it, and then ask for what you're worth. But you don't know what you're worth until you've done your research and you know what the market demands, but also what your skills are, right? So that's the marriage of that. The worst I can say is no, right? So the business piece, I'm still managing and developing interns, like Shalin, who's in the room today. Developing website plans and collateral, that's a big piece of what I do every day. And then content. So I just delivered a presentation at Crane's Leadership Academy, which is an opportunity I have through Flank 5. I'm a facilitator for a 12-week program for senior leaders, and I presented about passion and purpose. I then presented it at CCC the next week. And I'll probably present it again because the feedback was really good. The feedback was, it wasn't Emily Drake's grade. It was, wow, I have never actually thought about this. And I thought, as a CFO of a major healthcare organization, certainly you need like a passion. Certainly you need purpose. No, people really want to have a conversation. So that's great. So I'm sharing the content wherever I go, no matter what format it's happening. And then I'm also, this is a really important one, I'm doing a lot of research and sharing a lot of things that I hear about, read about, know about with other people. Laura is an expert at this. She is truly a repository, and she has a great ability to share information that's useful, to be of service, to become a subject matter expert. Because that's ultimately why people are going to hire me, because I know a lot about something, hopefully, or a little about a lot. So this is just kind of a day in the life, and I chose this kind of honeycomb pattern because they're all, this is all happening like all the time, but I've chosen to sort of break it down. I think this is clinical is a really important piece for us to talk about. I'm going to tell you though, it's not the lion's share of what I do. So a lot, I'd say the business and content development piece, probably more like 70% of what I do. It's going to take me a long time to get my LCP to you guys, and I am okay with that. But I had to come to peace with that, and that was always sort of my flow. It was never like hustle, get that LCPC, put my shingle on a door and open my own practice. So that wasn't that's not my calling. But it's probably going to take me another 3 or 4 years. So that is one sort of, I guess, downside for me. Okay. All right, my brand. How are we doing on time, by the way? Good? Oh, great. All right. So the branding conversation. So we talked about format, where I do the work. We talked about what the work is that I do. Both of these things feed out from my brand. My brand is how I make decisions on what clients to take, what projects to take, what new business ventures to potentially pursue, what speaking engagements I want to do. They all go through this screen. Literally, I think of this as like a screen window, right? Like, if it doesn't get through, I'm not doing it. And that's really good for someone in a portfolio career because you're going to get a lot of opportunities. I'm out and about a lot. Which is to say, people will say, hey, can you come speak to my small group of PhDs for looking to leave academia? And can you talk to them about job search skills? Like, we're just not sure. And it's, it's Thursday at 9 o'clock, and I'll think to myself, yeah, I could do that. Except it doesn't fit at all with kind of where I'm headed right now. So saying no is a big part of it, and this helps me say no. Just with, like, confidence and not like that FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, like, because that's help for me. But my brand, I am a storyteller and a connector. I'm committed to 2 things, inspiring hope and creating structure for individuals in transition. That's it. It took a long time to get to this, maybe like weeks of working with people and sort of doing the discernment around it. But I'm grateful I did, and this is everywhere. This is on my LinkedIn profile. This is in my brain constantly. This is when I give talks and I talk about kind of who I am. I'm always going back to this. One of the job offers that I turned down when I was leaving National didn't allow for me to work with individuals at all. It was all, I was an individual contributor, so I was on my own, and it was all delivering presentations like this. So there was no like meaningful one-on-one interaction. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And again, I'm being kind of cavalier. It was harder to make that decision, but it was easier because I had done this work. Has anyone done this work before, branding? Yeah. Okay. If I said to you kind of how would you articulate your brand, do you feel like you could do it? You don't have to do it. I'm just curious. Okay. Okay. Because that's the next step, right? Like being able to actually sell it. This is just a visual representation of kind of my brand, which is Storyteller and Connector. And again, the three formats. These are my three titles right now. So I'm a career counselor, I'm a facilitator, and then I'm a program and coaching director. But none of these sort of exist without that brand. That brand is like my beacon. Okay. Okay. This is just like, I want you to take this home if you take home nothing else. The portfolio career does not work, in my experience, and from what I know based on my research, if you're doing things in different contexts, like different content, okay? If you're trying to talk about fly fishing and what rivers are really great in Montana, and then you're also trying to talk about like interventions in short-term solution-focused therapy, and like trying to like, it's not a hobby. We're not trying to do hobbies and then we're trying to really think about what is the context, that unifying theme, the brand that goes through all of the formats that you're working in. So that's the like number one thing that I think is really important. If you're thinking about this as a path for you, to do the big work, to do the macro work first, and then kind of figure out what it's going to look like. All right, so is this a fit for you? I'm laughing because I don't fit the profile for this. So while I'm going to help you kind of think about how you might discern, I don't fit any of this criteria. So I'm kind of there's always outliers, right? But Nelson Gladwell says. So evaluate for fit. So take the assessments either through career services, but it sounds like all of you have had a career counseling class. You've taken MBTI or you've taken Strong, maybe StrengthsFinder. Anybody? Yes. StrengthsFinder is $10 online to get your top 5 strengths. I would, of course, advocate for going the full bore, doing the full assessment, and getting a coach to interpret it with you so that you have a way forward. CQC offers that, but you can't. It is accessible to you. Do you know any of your strengths just off the top? I don't need them. Okay, that's fine. Something to ask yourself, and I did do this when I was preparing this presentation. What were your extracurricular activities like in high school? Which I was like, but on the other hand, what did you do? Like, were you into band and sports and then student government? Like, did you thrive? The point is that did you thrive on variety? I don't know anyone who doesn't thrive on variety of some kind in some way in their life, but I'm asking you to think about, in the context of your day-to-day, like, does it charge you up that in the morning you're doing one-on-one counseling and you're going to present in the afternoon on something you really care about, then you're going to like volunteer, do some group coaching or something in the evening at your church? Like, does that get you going? Or is that like, that's too much, I don't want to do it? And that's okay, but it's good you have to know that. So for me, I was in student government, I was the editor of a poetry magazine. I had to actually think about this. I was on the badminton team, which is decidedly uncool, but it was so cool because it was uncool. For me, I can say that now, back then it was different. And then ultimately, I think as you're thinking if this is a fit for you, like I said, are you interested in business? Do you read the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes? Are you interested in like, I'm trying to think of a business headline in place. That, who bought AOL? Was it Yahoo? Thank you, Verizon. They bought AOL for an ungodly amount of money. Like, what does that mean? The way I think about it is, what does it mean for my clients? My clients who I'm career counseling, what does it mean that a big company bought out another big company? Does it mean job creation? Does it mean that they should think about if they're in telecom, like get out of telecom? So as I'm thinking about my responsibility as a counselor, I have to think, because I am a career counselor, I have to think about what's going on in the world. So that's responsibility for me. And then I'm also just interested in brands, like brand demise, brand growth. And having that interest allows me to have interest in my own brand. And I just can't get enough of Twitter, LinkedIn, all of that. So if you're not hot to trot on those things, this may not work for you because you're going to have to sell yourself a lot. And I'm selling myself right now, just not overtly, right? I have to thrive on this. I have to believe in what I'm talking about to have a good brand. And I do. I do believe in it. But ultimately, you guys decide that. I don't. So you decide on my brand much less than I do. I'll tell you what it is, but if it doesn't jive with you, then I'm wrong. So the audience is sort of the ruler with that. And then, like, I don't fit some of the profile here. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Perfectionists are not good as portfolio careerists because you have to make quick decisions and you have to communicate. right? There's always input. You have to screen, you have to source, you have to get through it. I love to belabor over the details, but I can't anymore. I mean, some details. Sometimes I get myself a little sick. But ultimately, there's no time for it. And part of that's just growing up, getting over the idea that being a perfectionist is even good. And allowing myself to fail. I was interviewed at CTC, and they asked me, they said, when's the last time you failed and overcame something? And I said, I didn't have anything to say. And it doesn't mean that I'm sure I did, but I lived my whole life not to fail. Now I kind of fail sometimes. Not comfortable. But it's growth. And then I'll skip the DISC profile. Just that I prefer introversion. I'm an INF, both the time. I'm an INFJ. So I will get pretty high off of this experience right now, and I am. I'm feeling really, I could talk to you. I would love actually for you to get up here and talk to me. But it's work, right? So it just means I have to carve out time to not do the stuff that I love, because otherwise I get really manic about it. And that's not good. My husband doesn't like it. I don't like it. No sleep. So I don't really fit. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. But these are ways that I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure. So evaluating for fit. What's the next? Not what is next. Go to the next one. Okay. Before you launch, so this is just kind of as we close out, stuff to think about if this is something you're interested in. I pulled a few of these from some articles. Forbes, Bernie, what is his name? Bernie Hobson. Do you know Bernie Hobson? No. Okay. Seth Godin has some of these in some of his literature, and we'll talk about resources in just a minute to read more. So defining your brand, I'm going to keep coming back to that. If you don't know how to do it, you can email me, talk to Laura, talk to Aisha. There's ways to go about it that are better than others, and none of them involve you just like in a cabin in the woods for a week. So it's going to be kind of like work that you're going to have to do in the community. For C, yes.
Can you just explain that part of it a little bit? It's really because we don't see ourselves clearly enough. Is that part of it?
I think that's part of it, but it's also, you had said I don't have any real experience. And part of my job as a peer is to say, hold up, that sounds like rubbish. Let's take a look at your experience and help you kind of see the pivot points along your career that have helped you get where you are today, and then help you actually tell that story so that you feel really confident that there's a theme. And part of being a good career counselor is helping people, any counselor, identifying themes in behavior, themes in decisions that you ultimately can resist but have to accept. So you kind of figure out who you are. Like, what gets you flowing, right? Like, why did I decide to go ziplining for the first time 2 months ago when it's something I've avoided my whole life? Right? What does it mean that I made that decision? It means I'm growing up. I'm getting used to being afraid of things.
And since in the strengths work, going back to that,
yeah,
they talk about how the things that you are strongest and make you unique come so easily to you that you tend to downplay their value.
Yep.
Oh, that was a big one. It was oh, well, everybody can do this. And it's no, you can't. Not everybody can do that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, one of my strengths, I think, is, one of them is connector. And I remember thinking, I want to be an achiever, not a connector. Achievers make money. What do connectors do? I went through that whole process of kind of just owning who I am, right? Stepping into it, and it turns out I can make some money doing it too, right? Foreseeing any conflicts of interest in negotiating terms. So if you do have that anchor job, which, again, is part of my story, right? I do have a full-time job. One of the things that I talked about before I signed on the dotted line was that I would have, I'm doing Slang 5 stuff. There's going to be Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, maybe, that I won't be able to come to the office. I'm going to be out doing other stuff. Part of that pitch was it helps CTC, right? If I'm out and I'm sort of sharing the message, they get more visibility just by default, but it also allows me to be sort of at the forefront of some different conversations and bring that content back to CTC to help our clients. So it's kind of all in how you sell it, but I was very transparent about that at the front end, which I think is really important. Establish one consistent line of work. If that's part-time, seeing maybe 8 clients a week at a private practice, If that's, part-time work at a career services center at a university, if it's full-time work, something consistent. I mean, we do need to have consistent income. So if you have any questions about how to do that, I'm happy to answer them. But I think having stable, something coming in that you know is coming in is really important. Unless you don't have to worry about that, which is possibly your story, I'm not sure. And then start a rainy day fund. I'm not going to go into that too much. We'll leave that up to Susie Orman. Protect your time. This is a big one. How are we doing on protecting our time? Better? Good? Horrible? It's not easy. I don't like saying no. So again, I'm getting a lot of a practice being assertive as a portfolio careerist, which is something that I need to work on all the time anyway. But just protect your time and avoid this thought of like fear of missing out. Like, what if I don't take this, right? As long as you've done your brand work, remember, as long as you've done your brand work, you can say no with more confidence. And you can say yes with more confidence. Because you know where you're headed. You know what you're all about. There's no in the gray. Network constantly and determine your worth. So networking, of course, whatever that looks like for you, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. We're networking right now. I know most of your names. By virtue of that, you can grab my business card on the way out, connect with me on LinkedIn, call me. It's happening. We're doing it right now. And determining your worth. So like I said, my business partner, Todd, was like, how about you up your charge? Like, so I charge $100 an hour for career counseling, 45-minute session. It's covered by insurance, that's in my pocket, and then I pay taxes, of course. He charges thousands of dollars, like 10, and sells it as a package. So he got me thinking about how can I package this? How can I make this more appealing to different people? How can I diversify my offerings? Make the choice easier for folks if they don't want to come see me individually every week. So again, I had to talk to someone who's done it before to think about that kind of stuff. And I don't have a Blue Cross Blue Shield panel, right? I'm free enterprise here. But I do get supervision and I do count my hours. You better believe it. And I think I do good work. I don't do any harm. That's the bottom line. And then get online. So do not ignore like getting on LinkedIn and being active on LinkedIn. I think for clinical, it's not. Aisha and I have talked about this before. Clinical or academic, maybe research-based folks. I guess LinkedIn is an option. I'm going to say it's not an option, mostly for search engine optimization. So if I type in your name because I'm interested in you, maybe you're speaking where I'm going, or I heard about you in the news, or you have to be searchable. You have to be, or you're irrelevant. So whether you get that through LinkedIn, Twitter, any of the other forums, Quora is a really great one to sort of establish your subject matter expertise. You can say kind of what you're expert in. And then you're going to get a feed of questions from just other Quora members, and you can start to answer questions. So one of them might be, what's the best way to prepare for an interview? I'd weigh in on that with my answer, and my results would get bumped up if people like it or bumped down if they don't. I'm just learning it, so that's all I know about it. But it's really cool. Again, it gets back to protecting your time. So you can't be on Quora all day. So that's really, the getting online piece and really be thinking about your brand online and in person is incredibly, it's just non-negotiable. If you want to do this work of selling yourself all the time, which I would argue, even if you take a full-time job at an agency, you're still doing. You might stop because you got a job. Okay. Sources. And I don't know, I would be happy to share these slides with you. So these have hyperlinks to some folks here. Seth Godin, his book, has anyone ever heard of Seth Godin? Awesome, great, so good. Portfolio Careers Group on LinkedIn, Marcy Alvor is another author. PortfolioCareers.net, they have a free downloadable of their intro chapters that I think gives some great primer for, again, screening to see if this might be a fit for you. And then Penelope Trunk, who is the quote at the front end, the founder of Chorus, she's just amazing. So if you're not already getting enough email, and I'm sure you are, I might suggest if you're thinking about kind of creating your own brand and maybe going to market as a company of one, creating a separate email to get these newsletters sent to, you have a repository for knowledge about how to market yourself, how to create maybe a compelling LinkedIn profile. Marcy, Penelope, and Seth all have newsletters. So just kind of beginning to get that information and start reading it and thinking about it, and then sharing it and talking about it with somebody. Like a career counselor. And that's all I have. So this is me. You're welcome to follow me. I typically follow back. And then I'm obviously on LinkedIn. You have a couple email addresses to get in touch with me. And I am just really, honestly, happy to be a resource. Consider us connected. Any questions at all, anytime, my door is open. I'm really passionate about being of service to folks in this, so it may take me a day or two, but I will get back to you. And happy, obviously, to answer any questions now, if you like. Yeah.
Interest. Where does volunteering fit into a portfolio career, or does it? Or is it a separate piece? It's not part of a portfolio career?
Well, I can only speak from my experience. I think it definitely fits in. I volunteer as long as it fits in my brand. I'm a strong believer in skills-based volunteering. So, for example, I am a small group leader at my church for a faith and work small group. That, to me, is a way for kind of to give my gifts. I live out more of my calling, but in a way that perhaps not as, I mean, there's certainly no money exchanged. I also do some volunteer work with Inspiration Corporation. I do some mock interviewing with them, and that's really, that fits for me. Which is not to say that I don't like the food prep piece of Inspiration Corporation, like making meals, serving meals. I think it's really powerful, and I like that. I think I'm my best and of greatest service when I'm working within my brand. So I just look for opportunities. I think it's a non-negotiable. You have to volunteer. Everybody has to volunteer. But for me, it also has to fit, or I don't know that I'm of most impact. And also, there's only so much time, so it has to fit in. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to come back to that question too about addressing a portfolio career interview, and then I know there's another question.
Yeah. So the special sauce with that is that my brand is everything. I have to have a way of describing it that makes sense. So if you've done the work of your brand, and I can speak to that, and then I talk about it in terms of the formats I do it, and I talk about the context, people get it. So it's not to say, it doesn't look like Emily has 3 different jobs. She's really disparate. She's all over the place. My responsibility is to create language that unifies all of these things, which hopefully I've done in presentation format, but also has to come across on my website, collateral, everything else. That my work is to help people or inspire hope and create structure for people in transition. If you want to hire me for that, that's what I do. And this is how I do it, and this is where I do it. And so it's really about being very clear on my intention and my brand. And then there's really, I've never had anyone say, I've never had any experience where folks are like, I don't get it. Maybe today's first, I don't know. But I haven't yet. And I'm always open to that kind of feedback. Hope that answers it. I get the question though. I get sort of the anxiety about like, but our responsibility is to tell the story. It's not up to the employer.
I was taking a course in career development, and I really liked it. And I just want to know from you what are some of the important next steps that I can take. I'm not graduating yet. Something I would like to maybe do some work in that area in the future.
Great.
So what are some of like important things that I could do while waiting?
Yeah. Well, Jill brings up a great point. Volunteering is a great place to start. So, for example, doing the mock interviews with Inspiration Corporation is going to get you a feel for the other side of the table for when you are a career counselor and you can help clients. How do you answer the question, tell me about yourself? Because you're going to get asked it. Terra program is another great one where you can actually do some work on helping people move their career along. From a starting point, that's sometimes like 4 barriers deep. Right? So maybe they have a background or they've been unemployed for many, many years. Volunteers can help do that. So really what you want experience in is getting people to move the needle and make progress in their career. Whether that is, by the way, landing a job is one thing, So is creating a resume. That's a big milestone. Creating a LinkedIn, getting an interview. So if you want, that's what you're going to be looking for. It's like, how can I embed myself somewhere where I'm helping people move that needle a little bit? So CARE program, Inspiration Corporation. You might also connect, I don't know where you went to undergraduate?
I went to school in Cameroon in Africa.
Okay. My thought there would be, certainly you can always volunteer to kind of help fellow students with resumes or do some kind of, as an alumni, I know a lot more than you do kind of thing, and let me help you with my knowledge and being glib about it. But giving back that way. So the bottom line is the volunteering, I think, is a really good opportunity. Now, CTC has volunteers. We have 40 coaches that volunteer with us. But I'm not really interested in people who don't have experience, which is, I know. But I might be able to, we could talk a bit more about it, but that's what's coming to mind for me right now. If anyone else has ideas, shout them out.
Upwardly Global.
Yeah, good call.
Folks who are in the U.S. from other countries who are now launching the job search in addition to maybe they're getting by jobs. And they host events and have mock interviewers, they go through a whole program and then have a day where folks can actually, and that's something that I volunteer with, but there's a lot of other similar organizations. Another area that I found that will take kind of early career volunteers might even be shelters or centers where sometimes individuals are really starting their career, sometimes first time ever. So at I volunteered at Humboldt where women who left there now have to get into the workplace. And so it's sometimes an opportunity to just, it might be somebody's first resume, it might be somebody's first job.
What is the name again?
The two that I happen to work with are Upnaka and Hamdard. They're small, local agencies, but there's lots of others. I would say it.
Have you had transitions yourself, Elizabeth? That kind of pre-qualifies you in some way because you have a story.
Of course, yeah, because I used to work in human resources before I moved here, and then tried to figure out what I need to do, and then I went to counseling. When I took my strong and my MBT, I realized so much that I still have those past experiences, still have a great presence in my life, and I can be able to still utilize them.
You might consider, too, maybe reaching out to people from your prior life and just saying, this is what I'm interested in now. If you're interested in also transitioning, maybe we could just talk about kind of what that could look like for you and allow your story to really be of service to others.
Any final questions? Emily, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Nice day. Yeah. I think we all learned quite a bit. Just keep in mind that and what I didn't say at the beginning of your session is that you're also a community partner with our office. And so, the idea that folks can connect in so many different ways with the institution, and I think Emily's points about kind of getting started and how you can leverage all of those pieces. Certainly for services, we're here to support. If there's anything that we can do in relation to that, do let us know. We try to have events, time is always of the essence, but if you get to things, I think the idea here is using enough of your own work in various ways to hopefully being successful then on the other end. So thank you very much for your welcome. No problem. I'm happy to thank you for Christine. If anyone wants to really want off, if you didn't get a chance to find anything, just yourself a little eval as well. And then we have another event tomorrow at 12. We have a alum who's talking a little bit about being both a clinician and a client, so serving as a clinician, but also what it's like to be a client. So Daniel here. He's also a fellow counseling grad. Next week, we have the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services coming in to talk about recruiting opportunities. So if you get a chance, please come to that as well. And in about 2 weeks, we have the launch of our licensure and certification week. So really kind of a few ways to hear from the board in Illinois about what those LPC and LCPC letters mean, what you can and can't do. And just again reminding you, you can get that information year-round, but it's nice to have that. And then we'll also have a kind of a recently hired and licensed panel coming up in a couple weeks as well. So lots to look at. If you're in different programs, we have some online options as well. So we hope you'll connect. Thank you.
Thank you.
cards are back there too, so please feel free to